Today, we are going to go on a trip right here in our own classroom. While on this field trip, we are going to learn about national symbols. The purpose of a national symbol is to unite people by creating a visual, verbal, or iconic representation of the national people, values, goals, or history. First, let's talk a little bit about the flag of the United States of America. The flag has a field of blue in the top corner, which has 50 stars, one for each state in the United States of America. The flag also has 13 red and white stripes, one stripe for each of the original 13 colonies. The first flag was known as the Stars and Stripes and was approved by the Continental Congress on June 14, 1777. The Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance was written by Francis Bellamy in August 1892. His words were, "I pledge allegiance to my flag and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." In 1923 and 1924, the National Flag Conference changed the words in Bellamy's pledge from "my flag" to "the flag of the United States of America." Then, in 1954, Congress added the words "under God." This gives us the pledge we say today. The Pledge of Allegiance is a symbol of loyalty to the United States. People say the pledge to show respect for their country. Let's stand up and say it together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job. Now sit down. Now let's learn about how the bald eagle became our national bird. The bald eagle was chosen on June 20th, 1782 as the emblem of the United States of America because of its long life, great strength, and majestic looks, and also because it was then believed to exist only on this continent. The eagle represents freedom. Living as he does on the tops of lofty mountains amid the solitary grandeur of nature, he has unlimited freedom. The bald eagle also symbolizes strength and courage. Now we are on to our first stop of our trip. We're going to South Dakota to see Mount Rushmore. Joanne Robinson contacted master sculptor Gutzon Borglum to help him plan out an idea he had for a sculpture to be carved in South Dakota's Black Hills. Borglum liked the idea, but wanted the sculpture to be a monument that conveyed the meaning of America. Gutzon Borglum chose 4 presidents to carve on the mountain, because to him they represented the first 150 years of American history. Mount Rushmore is a sculpture of 4 U.S. presidents who helped shape our country. The first is George Washington, because he was our first president, so he represents the birth of our country. The second is Thomas Jefferson, because he is recognized for overseeing the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, which added more land to the United States. He represents expansion. The third president is Theodore Roosevelt, because he promoted the construction of the Panama Canal. He represents development. And Abraham Lincoln was the 4th president chosen because he confronted the challenges of the Civil War and was able to keep the ideas and goals of our founders, so he represents preservation. The 4 presidents' heads are carved into granite on the southeast side of Mount Rushmore. Just as Gutzon Borglum wanted, the 60-foot-tall heads represent the first 150 years of the United States, symbolizing the nation's independence, democratic process, leadership in world affairs, and equality. Work began officially on October 4, 1927. After 14 long years of planning, carving, and money troubles, the monument was completed in 1941. The carving process of the stone sculpture itself took a total of 6.5 years to complete and was carved with the help of hundreds of workers using dynamite, jackhammers, chisels, and drills. Today, Mount Rushmore is one of the most popular tourist attractions in the United States. It is visited by millions of visitors each year and stands as a symbol of this great nation. We are now off to New York to see the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty was given to the United States on July 4, 1884, as a gift of friendship from France. The statue was presented to the U.S., taken apart, shipped across the Atlantic Ocean in crates, and then it was rebuilt in the harbor of New York City, New York, on Liberty Island. The French raised money to build the statue, and Americans paid for the base the statue would stand on. It took 21 years for the statue to go from an idea to a full-sized statue. The Statue of Liberty is 111 feet, 6 inches tall, and is covered in 300 sheets of coin-thin copper. It's a universal symbol of freedom and democracy. The statue of a robed woman holding a torch has welcomed visitors, immigrants, and returning Americans traveling by ship for more than a century. The Statue of Liberty was dedicated on October 28, 1886, and was designated a national monument in 1924. The next stop of our journey is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here we will learn about a number of things: the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. The Declaration of Independence was written by Thomas Jefferson between June 11th and June 28, 1776. Shortly after, the Continental Congress heard Richard Henry Lee of Virginia read his resolution. The Lee Resolution was an expression of what was already beginning to be heard throughout the colonies, a desire for independence from Britain. After he wrote the Declaration, Thomas Jefferson asked Benjamin Franklin and John Adams to add corrections to his document. On July 1, 1776, the Congress began to consider the need for a document to show its independence. They went straight to the Declaration, written by Jefferson. Franklin and Adams had only made a few changes before the committee submitted the document for discussion in Congress. The discussion in Congress ended with some alterations and deletions, but the basic document that Jefferson wrote remained. The process of revision continued through all of July 3rd and into the late morning of July 4th. At last, the church bells rang out over Philadelphia. The Declaration had been officially adopted. The first printed copies of the Declaration of Independence were turned out from the shop of John Dunlap, official printer to the Congress. The Declaration of Independence was signed on August 2nd, 1776, after Timothy Matlack had printed it onto parchment. It was first signed by John Hancock, the President of the Congress, and then by the other 56 delegates from the 13 colonies. While in Philadelphia, we also need to talk about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which is part of the Constitution. The Constitution is the highest law in the United States. All other laws come from the Constitution. It says how the government works. It creates the presidency, the Congress, and the Supreme Court. The Constitution is important because it contains the laws of our nation. Without it, there would be chaos across the nation. The Constitution was written in 1787 by a group of men known as the Framers. The Framers met to find a new way of running the country. This meeting is called the Convention. By talking about it, they came up with a plan that everyone could agree with. After the Convention, the Constitution had to be approved. When the Constitution was written, the Framers knew it was not perfect, and they made sure that it wasn't too hard for other people with good ideas to make changes. But they made sure it wasn't too easy also. The Framers added an amendment process. An amendment to the Constitution is a change that can add to the Constitution or change an older part of it. Soon after the new government started meeting, Congress proposed the Bill of Rights. In 1791, a list of 10 changes were agreed to by the states. The 10 changes were added to the Constitution. These 10 changes are called the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is the first 10 changes or amendments made to the Constitution. These 10 amendments were passed because some people were afraid that the government would have too much power. The Bill of Rights is a part of the Constitution, but is very important because the Bill of Rights protects our freedoms. Some examples of these freedoms are the freedom to say what you want and not be punished for your opinions, and you can believe in any religion you want. The government cannot force you to believe in something. You cannot be forced to house soldiers in your home. The police cannot come into your home without a good reason. The police may not take your belongings without reason. The police cannot force you to architects. 7 years later, the north wing was finished and was able to hold the first session of Congress on November 17, 1800. Over the next 95 years, the Capitol building construction project saw 6 different architects, fire during the War of 1812, a third competition in 1850 because the building was no longer big enough, the construction stopping due to the Civil War, and a fire in 1898, and many reconstructions due to damage from rain and fires. Even though all those difficult times and multiple architects, the Capitol building was completed. The 20th century brought more changes for the Capitol. The East Front extension added 102 rooms from 1959 to 1960. The stonework also changed from sandstone to Georgia marble during that process. In 1970, there was a public protest to keep them from expanding even more. Instead, the vote went to restoring rather than enlarging the West Front. Since then, primary emphasis has been on strengthening, renovating, preserving the building. Today, the Capitol covers a ground area of 175,170 square feet and has a floor area of about 16.5 acres. In addition to its use by Congress, the Capitol is a museum of American art and history. It stands as a focal point of the government's legislative branch and as a centerpiece of Capitol Hill and the National Mall. Now we're off to St. George. On this field trip, we have seen many national monuments and landmarks. The purpose of a national monument in the United States is to protect all historic and prehistoric sites on U.S. lands. The importance of a national monument, memorial, or landmark is to represent the nation and serve as a focus of national identity. There are some monuments that remind us of difficult times in our history. Then, there are other monuments that were created or built to honor the great people of the United States history. We have seen many of these monuments today, each one honored for its own reason, but all representing our nation and serving as a focus for our nation's identity.